Yeah, I was. I'm a little distracted. I just have some lower back pain that I'm trying to deal with, but we'll still follow the conversation.
And it's good learning for me based on the hopes that we have of continuing as supportive chairs.
Yeah, I was. Oh no, we're having the same problem with the feedback on the.
No, I just got it muted. It was just one.
Awesome. Oh, great. Okay. Oh, and I wanted to say my apologies, especially to Andrea, because I think that I said that I was going to compile everything on a Google on something, and then I totally didn't.
That's okay. The documents that were there couldn't really be commented on, so I just made my own copy.
Okay.
And I only have a couple comments. So,
Okay.
thanks.
And Sean, did you send the comments over from our little review?
I think I did.
Okay.
Oh, let me make sure. Sorry. Let me make sure that I sent it to the right person. Yes, I sent it to Miranda at Thinking Rock.
Okay, perfect.
Sorry, I'm a bit of a space
No.
cadet today.
No problem. You're not a space cadet. Okay, well, I suppose we can get started and jump into things then. Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you. It's nice to be here to talk about some policy review. Let me just find the proper agenda. So the first, beyond the welcome, the first order of business, I think, on our agenda today is the selection of the chair and co-chair for the committee. So would anybody like to?
Sorry, Miranda, is there others supposed to be joining us?
Jane had indicated that she could make the meeting today. I'm pretty sure that was the one she was referring to.
And is Katie on the committee as well, or?
Katie's on public art.
Oh, never mind. Okay, sorry, got those mixed up.
Is everyone present, sorry, for this committee subcommittee? Everybody?
No, just yeah. Yeah, so yeah, I know they get confusing because we've got.
No, it's too many now.
Yeah, so I think that would be, yeah, I think we're good, unless you wanted to wait a few more minutes to see if Jane's going to jump in.
I am fine with waiting a few more minutes if everyone else is. Okay.
I was trying to find my notes to see who's all on this committee.
It's the 3 staff, and then it's, well, everybody that's here, and then plus Jane. So there was 4 committee members that joined, so which then made it a subcommittee because there was more committee members than staff.
Should we proceed?
Yeah, I think so. And we don't have to necessarily have like 2 co-chairs or chairs, because I would imagine the committee is only going to be a few meetings long before we've got those recommendations nailed down to bring back to the Cultural Vitality Committee. So.
Okay. Well, then let's move into the selection of the chair. Would anybody like to volunteer themselves for that role or offer themselves up?
I nominate Miranda.
Are there any other nominations? If there's no other nominations, do you accept, Miranda?
Yes.
Okay, so
I'll second it for the minute.
all right. So it's resolved that the nominations be closed and that Miranda Bouchard is nominated for the position of chair for the Cultural Policy Subcommittee.
Okay. You may all change your minds after this evening. We shall. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is declaration of pecuniary interests. Does anyone have any interest to declare before we jump in? Okay, seeing none, let's move to the new business item on the agenda, which is review of the cultural policy itself. So the version that we received in our agenda package, I noticed has some recommendations and some changes noted to Kathy. Let me just pull up that version here. Sorry, folks, I have too many windows open on my computer right now.
I still operate on paper.
Yeah, there's something about the tactility and directness of printed copies that I trust and appreciate very much. So does it make sense to progress through the document together and to discuss the points as they appear? And as we go along, anyone who has further notes to add into the sections as we pass them can raise them for discussion.
Did the recommendations, Miranda, that you and Sean sort of talked about get incorporated in this one document?
I am just scrolling through here.
I tried looking through to see if I received
Oh, I might.
anything.
Oh, geez, sorry.
I didn't receive them either.
No, I don't think that they're represented here.
No, they're definitely not, because I just had Kathy's notes. Hi, Jane.
Jane,
Sorry, I thought I had included you guys. I thought I had sent it out, but I must not have.
that's okay. I'll have both versions here together and then can speak to some of our changes, the ones that we suggested, Sean, as we go along. So, and then anyone else who has recommendations that they would like to raise as we go, please feel free to interrupt me because I'm going to have my eyes in two documents. I may not see you if you wave, so just feel free to jump in. So the first change or the first recommendation that Sean and I highlighted is on page 5.
Can I just interrupt?
Of course.
Miranda, are you looking at the attachment that Sean shared with us and then the other attachment that Virginia sent?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I sent an attachment to someone. I wasn't sure if I sent it out to anybody.
Okay. And I'm seeing the first recommendation actually on page 2 in the document with recommendations from Virginia and Kathy. So let's start there. The highlight is on the word growth, and the comment says, heritage influences economic prosperity and tourism diversity, leading to a thriving and healthy community.
And I think just from when we were doing it, I was trying to put it in a space. It didn't want to. It kept bouncing back to growth. So it wasn't necessarily a couple of those at the end attached to that specific word. It was just a statement to be included with that there.
Yeah, I was just reading through there and I just wondered if another sort of sentence might help. That was all. Just because it talks about the 20-year plan focusing on the 4 pillars, and that's economic and all of that. And then, so then I thought, well, maybe to tie in the cultural plan, that we sort of end that paragraph with something, I don't know. It was just another line I was thinking.
Any other remarks about this point that anyone would like to add in here? Todd?
Yeah, I think it just wraps it up and ties it together, so I'm fine with that. Reinforces what the beginning of the paragraph talks about, so.
I agree.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Moving on to the next page, page 3. There's another nice purple comment here from Kathy Fisher pertaining to the last paragraph in 1.1. The city acknowledges the importance of the cultural industry's contribution to socioeconomic resilience through generating employment, creating a distinctive community identity, and an attractive place to live. And the comment says, perhaps add, this policy provides a framework to guide the planning, provision, and supports of arts, culture, and heritage in Sault Ste. Marie.
Again, it was just a statement I was just thinking about, because this is a statement of purpose for the policy, this section. So.
Yeah, I like the idea.
I see Todd's giving the thumbs up back there.
I think it reorients the preamble to, well, I mean, it's the statement of purpose, right? Like, what's the purpose of the policy, and ties it back together.
Okay. Any other comments from Jane or Andrea? No.
I might add in that last sentence before the one that we add. It says the city acknowledges the importance of the cultural industry's contribution to socioeconomic resilience. Oh, you know what? Never mind. It says socioeconomic. I was going to tie into the social equity piece, but I think that's encapsulated there already. Never mind.
Okay. Andrea, you look pensive. Anything to add?
Well, I mean, I guess it's just a bigger issue that I struggle with, in that, you know, the arts are often only considered to be of value in terms of how they contribute to socioeconomic, well, the socio part is that other resilience. But I think highlighting the impact of arts in community wellness could be an important factor, just to highlight the significance there. So, so maybe instead of just creating a distinctive community identity, comma, community and individual wellness and an attractive place to live.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that, just to highlight that it's not just the economic benefits.
Yeah, and maybe through nurturing community and individual wellness.
Yeah. I like that.
Okay. Okay.
Can we add the word social there, or does it mean the same? Community social well-being.
Mm-hmm.
I think it works.
Which part, Jane? After which sentence? Or which? I'm trying to
Community.
get into the document as we're going as well.
Miranda, can you read your last statement, please?
I can try to repeat it. I'm not making edits. I thought Virginia might have been making edits. It'll be The city acknowledges the importance of the cultural industry's contribution to socioeconomic resilience through generating employment, creating a distinctive community identity, nurturing community and individual wellness, and an attractive place to live.
And
So
so
nurturing the community social wellness, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, just to confirm, we're adding social in front of wellness? Is that what? Okay. Okay, I got it.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Virginia, and thanks for your patience all.
And sorry
Okay,
to interrupt again, Virginia, what you're typing, is it shareable? Is everybody seeing it, or it's only you who's seeing it?
It's only myself that's seeing it right now, just because it's not linked to my laptop.
Okay.
I'll recirculate the document to everybody though.
yeah, and Virginia, you were mentioning it will take a few meetings together, probably to land on all of these adjustments that we are making. So there will be time for adjustment and discussion, review and adjustment and discussion as we go. So we may not get through everything today, but it's definitely good to be having the conversations. And thanks everyone for your contribution so far. And Jane, don't hesitate to interrupt. Feel free to do that anytime.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. So the next edit that I'm seeing is 0.1.2 under definition of culture, and it's just a strikeout of and a replacement with for.
I didn't know, that was me again. I didn't know what that should be.
So the sentence is culture in Sault Ste. Marie is the individual and collective creative and artistic expression in all its forms, as referenced in this municipal cultural policy, influenced and inspired by its diverse peoples, its industrial and social history, Indigenous heritage, and natural beauty. And then with the change, its culture in Sault Ste. Marie is the individual and collective creative for artistic expression in all its forms, as referenced in this municipal cultural policy. I think I'm inclined to think that it might read a little bit more sensibly with and. Any comments from anyone?
Thumbs up from Todd.
I thought so too. Like for to work, it might make sense to change creative to creativity. But I think with the other
Yeah.
words all the same.
Just put it back to and.
Okay, and the idea of switching to creativity is a nice one. I like that thought. The sentence reads a little bit more tidily that way. Collective creativity and artistic expression. Okay, I'm going to move down, but please feel free to interrupt at any time. Now the next, this is where our versions overlap a little bit. So the next portion that I see recommendations in is under visual arts on page 4, right at the top of the page. So Kathy suggests mixed media here. Are you suggesting mixed media in addition to woodworking or as a substitution to woodworking?
No, just it was an addition. I think again, Virginia was having a hard time just tagging the sections. I just didn't know if it might be a word if we use mixed media that would sort of take in all the ones that could possibly exist beyond this list. Under visual though.
Well, I'm seeing in the chat box that Sean is agreeing, and I feel inclined to agree. Go ahead, Andrea.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, these sort of, larger subject areas or fields, and then breaking down the examples. I know they're listed as examples, but are not limited to, but I feel like when I read them, they don't feel like a community that has a sense of what's going on in the arts world. Like they feel very dated. And I think, there's so much sort of intermingling between those different definitions that trying to confine them to those specific areas. I just don't even know if it's necessary. Can we just list visual arts, literary arts, heritage arts, media arts, civic arts? Like, do we need those definitions? If we do need them, though, I think then we have to make them much more expansive if we're going to start listing everything. But even so, I feel like it doesn't make us feel like we are very connected to contemporary art worlds. So.
I think that's what I was getting with by starting to add more to the lists as well. I thought there could be any number of types of art that come forward.
Mhm. And
Yeah, so I think go either way at everything. Like everything in media arts should also be included in visual arts because they're not two distinct areas. They're often overlapping, and so I think it might just be cleaner to leave out all the additions. But
I saw Todd's hand, and then I'd like to add something to what Andrea was saying. Todd.
Yeah, I agree with Andrea. I never liked this definition that was kind of the remnants from the last one. And I think that's why we added on at the beginning the definition from the cultural plan, because it was a little more current, inclusive, and like, I didn't like these buckets that were made before. And I agree, they do sound like there's something from the 1980s or 90s. So I don't know, maybe can we just, if that's something that everybody is agreeing on, maybe we just use that definition as it is in the cultural plan instead of having these subsection, like two parts of a definition, the remnants of the old one with the new one, just have the new one. That's all.
Well, I think that's a good point. Thanks, Todd. The other thing that I was going to say is that not everyone who reads the cultural policy is necessarily going to have the same connection and familiarity with what is encompassed under these areas. And so on one hand, it may make sense to have broad definitions provided. But in my mind, it could also make more sense if we're going to keep these terms and these kind of parsed out disciplines and methods to either say etc. or and others afterwards, just so that it's very clear that they're not all encompassing kind of breakouts of what we mean by those things or what is meant by the. But listening to, like, keeping that in mind and also listening to what Todd just said, I am willing to go with the majority because I can see the merits to both potentially. Jane, do you have any thoughts about this? Could you be a tiebreaker?
I wanted to suggest that maybe that the last sentence on page 3 could read differently so that it's more inclusive and more broad. And maybe we can frame it as examples of arts abroad and may include but are not limited to. So anybody reading it knows that that is just some of the examples, but it can be as broad because art can be a living document, a living definition in terms of the society keeps changing. What we define as arts today, tomorrow we'll have something that we can add to it. And if the definition is broad from the very beginning, then it does provide room for us to grow.
Agreed. Practice is ever evolving and definitely far from static. And there's a lot here that is not encompassed or named.
If we are going to keep them though, can we rework how they're listed? Because I still think at least under, visual and media arts, and I think even under literary arts, they might be problematic. And I would also say, why, how come I guess music is under performing arts too. So But yeah, I mean, definitely the visual arts one I would want to sort of expand because it's a much more expanded field these days.
Andrea, how would you see that read?
I would have to work on that a little bit, but yeah, it definitely might need expanding. And I mean, the other area that I wonder about too, like, and Miranda could probably speak to this more, is that, you know, should there be a separate category for community arts, because they're often interdisciplinary, working across multiple of these different fields, or do we just include something that states that we recognize that, you know, many artistic and creative endeavors are going to be working across these different areas?
In terms of community arts, you know, I'm inclined to agree that yes, it should be recognized as its own discipline. But I think that the piece that you just added, Andrea, that these definitions and descriptions are not exhaustive, and we recognize that many practices encompass and reach beyond prescribed disciplines listed above, something to that effect.
Yeah, except that I do think the community arts has a different layer added to it that other disciplines and maybe individual groups or professional groups might not have in the same way. Like, there's a different layer to it in terms of the collaborative or community engagement element.
Yeah, I'm for breaking it out. Sean, go ahead.
One of the things that Miranda and I had a chat about too is if we do keep these definitions here, we also wanted to take a crack at modifying the heritage arts descriptions as well, because this is very much about heritage being something in the past being preserved, right? As opposed to you know, parts of our lives in contemporary society, and so that was another one of the things that we sort of flagged as potentially being. I guess my question now is, are we keeping them or not?
Yeah, it might be easier not to, maybe just to do what Andrea said at the beginning is, and also what Jane said is that line above is, you know, these are examples, but just sort of listing, not with the definitions, not expanding it. I don't know, is that easier? So that it just says community arts, visual and media arts, literary heritage, and I added civic. Do we want that? So I don't know, but if we say it's examples and not limited to, or a combination, right?
Mm-hmm. I guess in thinking of that though, you know, I wonder, maybe Virginia and Todd can answer, like, who is, are you finding there are many people that are leaning on these definitions in these documents? Like, who are they serving? Like, is it city council members?
I think it varies. It would be city council. It would just be, you know, somebody, potentially a community member. I don't know how often the documents are read and get accessed. We do reference the definitions in other applications, so as defined by the cultural policy. So that's referenced in heritage documents, as well as I think it's in the ACAP funding document, so arts and culture funding document. But yeah, I think sometimes, you know, there are instances where it's not specifically listed, so you need to make sure it's that either that et cetera is there, or that it's really focused, that it's not limited to this list. This is just an example for maybe a person who's not that knowledgeable in the different types to actually take a look and say, okay, yeah, I see what they're getting at. Because, you know, when you look at community arts and civics arts, if both those are added in, some people that are out there may not be able to define the difference or know what that difference between those two is compared to visual arts, right?
I agree. If you put in civic arts, they're gonna think it's something weird at City Hall. Like, I don't think they'll get what, but it's architecture and all that. And to me, that would could slide in with heritage a little bit. But yeah, community arts, I'm not sure people would know without a definition 100% what you're talking about there.
You could provide one.
But yeah, I think in the ACAP, what we did is we just did what Kathy had said, is we listed them and not limited to. And I think we just left it at that. But if we add some that maybe are not common, we probably should have some kind of a glossary or a reference to define that somewhere else in the document, maybe. Like, it doesn't have to be in this, 1.2, but it could be referenced and then in a glossary later on or something. It could be in there for definition. I don't know.
Go ahead, Jane.
I just wanted to give my perspective. When we were applying, we did get funding to do a storytelling session, not last year, the other year. And we struggled a lot to find a fit in the application that was available on the website. And it was because of the ambiguity that I say here. Because when it is very ambiguous and you have communities looking at it and trying to see where there's a right fit for them, if it is not expanded to indicate that for the diverse, rich community that we live in Sault Ste. Marie, that if your art is not defined here, you can still apply. It may leave out other people thinking, oh, I can't be included because my art is not reflected here.
Yes, agreed. Thank you, Jane. Looking at the notes that Sean and I had made, oh, apologies. Sean has his hand raised and he's patiently waiting. Go ahead, Sean.
No worries. Sorry, I'm trying to break my habit of just starting to talk. One of the areas where this definitely, like to Jane's point, I think one of the areas where this definition has the most consequence is when we do our deliberations around the arts funding. Because if there's an application that the committee members feel is out of the scope of what's being applied for, it's on the basis of the definition that that can be justified or not. And that doesn't always, it can work for good and for ill as well, right? Because we want to make sure that our definition is broad enough that it is inclusive to respond to the diverse community needs that we have, but also that the funding is still being applied in what we all agree are artistic, cultural heritage expression. And in our last deliberations, we came across a couple examples that at the time we felt didn't really fit. So that's where there's consequence to the definition, I think.
Thanks, Sean, and thanks, Jane. And I think further to what Sean is saying and pulling from what Jane said, if people can't imagine themselves in the policy or even in the later application processes, then it becomes an access and inclusivity issue too. So having wider definitions, even though it feels like a bit of a long list, I think I feel is really key. But that being said, the main discipline, I guess, headings should align with what's present in other documents. And looking at the notes that Sean and I made, we also mentioned we should check out the OAC's definitions of artistic categories and the Canada Council's definitions to make sure that the language that we are using is up to date. and inclusive, and that kind of the subcategories that are listed there are aligned and connected with what we're seeing in other funders. And also brought up multi-arts, which is very connected to Kathy's suggestion too. So, and just looking at go ahead, Kathy.
Oh, sorry, I was going to put my hand up. I took my mic off. I didn't also know in my comment about civic arts, which doesn't have to be included, but is this cultural policy also going to overlap and be an umbrella policy that will cover the public art? I know you're working on a public art policy. Are they side by side, or is one over the other? So
Sorry, Cassie, the cultural policy will be the main document, and then the other documents like public art filter up to the cultural policy.
So that's why I kind of wondered, should we be putting something in here about public art or something, or it may not be a definition, but maybe somewhere in the policy it has to reference that other policy.
And there's a definition of public arts, like obviously the public art policy too. So it's a good connection to make there.
Sorry, I was just double checking my agenda. What, can somebody remind me what time we're meeting until this evening?
5.
5, okay. So we'll try to push through this section, although this is really great, an interesting discussion. And I'm thankful to hear from everybody about your perspective with regard to these definitions. I notice in the same section that playwriting is included under literary arts, and that production is included under media arts. And then of course, we've got the addition of civic arts. So go ahead, Virginia, I see you.
Just, do we want to, maybe what we can do is take a look at the definitions on OIC and that, and actually put them all columns side by side. So we've got, here's what it is, here's how they're defining it and what we have to date based off of the discussions. And then that could be a starting point for the next part of the discussion, and we can weigh in on that.
Yeah,
that's cool.
That sounds great. And I see a thumbs up from Todd too. All right, perfect, thank you. Let's move on to section 2, statement of policy. And under 2.1 policy objectives, under 2.1.1 rather, there's a suggestion to include provide guidance. So the sentence would read, to encourage, promote, maintain, provide guidance, and further develop cultural expression in Sault Ste. Marie at both the amateur and professional level and through all ages. Thoughts, comments, questions? Any objections to the addition? Go ahead, Andrea.
I mean, this also brings up a question of whether, is it the city's role to provide the guidance, or is it the city's role to support other organizations in providing support and guidance? I'm just not sure if that's something that's normally within the sort of the city's culture. It's great if it is, but then we should make sure that, like, we always have someone in that position to be providing that guidance. So if this policy can help ensure there's someone employed who's going to provide that guidance, that's great.
Sorry about that. You're on my words, aren't you? Provide guidance. We don't have to put it in.
No, I mean, I think it's great. I just think it has, if it's going to be in the policy, then, you know, to be able to, for the city to provide that guidance, we got to make sure there's someone in that position all the time, which is great, for sure.
Do we know the verdict on?
It's the arts and culture position. It's continuing, so
Okay.
yeah, the hope is that will always be there. I can't imagine once they have the positions in, they usually, for time, they don't usually cut them. But yeah, no, the plan is to move forward with that position as per the recommendations. So yeah, so that's good, because there's no way we can do this without help. So no, so that's a good part. And I think that's part of, like, I know Todd's done quite a few projects where, you know, trying to get some of that mentorship in place for youth that, you know, whether the artists are coming. So that's been a big part of a number of the initiatives, is looking for those opportunities to, you know, help provide opportunities. So yeah.
Yeah, the guidance is not necessarily from us, but we facilitate it.
I guess the only suggestion I would make maybe is to support. Guidance seems a little bit too maybe directive in terms of determining the outcome of the artworks.
Yep.
In terms of authorship. So maybe if it's promote, support. Yeah.
Thanks, Andrea. Go ahead, Jane.
I just wanted to support what Andrea is saying, because if you include the word guidance there, it denotes that the individual who will be doing the work has to know all the cultural expressions, which is not possible. You can only be proficient in your own culture.
Thanks, Jane. I see that Sean and I had more to add to that point. So it would be a substitution. Instead of at both the amateur and professional level and through all ages, what we recommended was at all levels and for people of all ages, abilities, and backgrounds.
Sorry, at all levels and for.
At all levels and for people of all ages, abilities, and backgrounds.
All right, I got that.
Okay, and Sean and I had quite a few pieces to add to this section, actually. So let me just sort out where our Post-its are. For 2.1.2, rather than just saying culture, we think it should say arts, culture, and heritage to align with the way that the definition appears in other places. In section 2.1.3, Sean, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think we suggested a rewording of point 2.1.3.
I think that's what the intent was there.
Okay, thank you. And what we've suggested is to facilitate participation in and activation of arts, culture, and heritage.
Sorry, can you say that again, Miranda? Which one was it? I was just finishing up typing the other one.
Absolutely. So section 2.1.3.
Yeah.
To reword it to say to facilitate participation in and activation of arts, culture, and heritage.
Okay, thank you.
No worries, thank you. On 2.1.4, let me just sort this out here. Sean, can you help me decode our notes for 2.1.4, please?
Yes, let me oh, add a reference to belonging. So going beyond civic pride and a municipal sense of identity to also emphasize belonging within the community. And yeah, then I have the very helpful guidance of saying tweak the wording. That's what I have.
Okay, and then, thank you, Sean. And then on point 2.1.5, again, rather than saying cultural activities, we suggest changing that to arts, culture, and heritage activities. I see your hand, Andrea. And then Jane.
So just in the interest of tweaking words, so rather than just acknowledging the importance, maybe advocating for the importance of the cultural industry and development of civic pride, if possible. We've been pushing the OAC in different consultations to also take on more of this advocacy role as well. So the more governments do this, the better.
Thanks, Andrea. Go ahead, Jane.
I was also thinking in the line of what we had earlier on discussed about the impact. So rather than just keep it as economic impact, if we can frame it as both economic and social impact on the whole community.
Thank you.
Yeah, maybe in terms of, I'm interested in what others feel about this as well, but to get at that sense of belonging, maybe after civic pride, comma, a municipal sense of identity, comma, and to foster a sense of belonging, or to foster an inclusive sense of belonging within the community. And then followed by and its social and economic impact.
You're muted, Virginia.
Sorry, I was just going to read it back. So to advocate the importance of the cultural industry in the development of civic pride, a municipal sense of identity, to foster an inclusive sense of belonging within the community, and its economic and social impact on the whole community.
I mean, it's wordy, but it hits the right notes.
Yeah, I would just add advocate for the importance.
Yeah.
Excellent. This is some good collaborative policy shaping, folks.
I
Thank you.
think that's sort of what I was getting at with my note. I said, do we want 2.1.7? And maybe my thoughts are now sort of hitting the point in the one we just did, because I was thinking of building community pride and strengthening community identity. It was that same sort of thought process. So we may not need my extra little one.
Okay. I'll read out that point anyway, just so that we can hear it and compare it. Kathy's suggested 2.1.7 is to provide opportunities for artists and the public to express their individual and collective ideas through public art as a means to build community pride and strengthen community identity. That's my cat. 1 second.
What while Miranda's away, what I really like about what you've drafted there, Kathy, is that it provides the framework for then the public art policy to be connected.
Yeah, I think it's still important to have that in there because, yeah, it's that connection back through that's one of the key purposes, right? Or policy objectives is to support the public art policy.
Yeah,
And
I think
that was sort of another point that I was just trying to make again, is back to that other public art policy. But on what we were trying to say in 2.1.4. Sorry, Andrea.
no, I think it's good. I think 2.1.4, isn't just covered by public art. And I think if we're, 2.1.6 is getting into the preservation of historic buildings. So then I think adding a point for public art totally makes sense. Because public art can be any of the different, it can involve any of the different fields. So I think it's important to include it.
Just doing a quick time check. It's 4:52. I think that we might have time to take a look at section 3 and maybe cover the recommendations in 3.1 and maybe squeeze into 3.2 if everyone is okay to try. Do a little more, okay. So in section 3.1, Sean and I have a posted in our notes around the title, just a note to align with policy objectives, to check to make sure that it aligns with policy objectives. Am I getting that note right, Sean? I think that's what we meant. Yeah, okay. And then there's a note on point 3.1.4. And buildings is highlighted there. So
I was just thinking, not the word buildings, but after is maybe, and it wasn't an accessibly inventory, it was accessible in. So if there was, I know we have it, but to have, so maybe not develop, but to maintain an accessible inventory of the public art or something. I just thought, again, I was just adding in public art again. It was just because it says access to the arts in public spaces. And then I thought, well, maybe have the document accessible on what is out there as public art. An inventory.
Like a searchable database, sort of like an opportunity to access the collection and make it more accessible that way. Nice idea.
So
Do you have a museum background?
We've actually started to get that database all pulled together because it resides in different areas. So that's actually a project that's being worked on right now, which it could be something that the public could search to see, what Ken Danby's we have, what the different pieces are that the city actually has.
That would be really wonderful for teaching too. And I know the public art course right now, they were kind of doing some of that, going to tour the different sites. So it'd be great to have that all available online.
I wonder too if that's something that's connected to or will be connected to in any version of the cultural tourism strategy that's developed. Because that could also help people to plan visits.
I know the pieces, so they're going to be separated to kind of into two categories. One that's actually out on the streets versus what's actually housed within City Hall. Right now, obviously, a lot of it's not accessible just due to COVID and not being able to get to all the levels. But yeah, the stuff that's there can be kind of, here's what's part of a tour. We are working on eventually having those tours set up as well. So yeah, I will look at some wording for that statement.
Excellent. As an aside, I'll sign up for a tour when it's time.
To be the tour guide.
Okay, looking at 3.1.6. What Sean and I have in our little note here is to reword that point to say encourage the integration of arts, culture, and heritage into community events.
Sorry, which one is that again? I was just finishing the other statement.
No worries. I'm sorry, Virginia.
No, that's fine. I wasn't doing a very good job multitasking. So which point was it? Sorry, 3.1.6.
That's right.
Encourage the integration.
Encourage the integration of arts, culture, and heritage into community events.
Perfect.
Yeah. And then the last point, 3.1.7, there are 2 remarks. So Kathy's recommendation is another addition to advocate and ensure that culture is included in municipal strategies and plans, i.e. economic, social, and downtown development strategies. So that would be a new subpoint.
I know that like for infrastructure, it is included. There's like 1% of new build, right? But it's just, I was just thinking the cultural policy we might want it stated that it's just then becomes more, it's kind of in black and white then, that we want to still continue to advocate for other areas of the municipality to keep culture in the forefront of their minds, right? In the other strategies. So that was just me advocating for us.
Just a little advocacy. Yeah, well, Sean, looking at the chat, Sean says he likes it and I like it too. So Virginia, do you need me to repeat any of that?
Nope,
Good to
I've
go.
got that all in there.
Okay, so the last piece that we have is a note from Sean and I.
And I realize it's incredibly vague. It just says flag. We were concerned about 3.1.7, but apparently unable to put it into words. Yeah, Andrea, you
Well, I mean, yeah, I think of course we want to, promote the collection of works, but if I'm sure many of you have been paying attention to the complexities of collections these days, like there's many large museums, art galleries, deaccessioning work, partly to address the inequities in past collection practices, especially, when more work can be done to support living artists rather than deceased artists. I know it's also, what kind of collection can be done responsibly with the spaces that current city institutions have. So I think just those factors have to be taken into account. Like, can we responsibly encourage getting community members to donate artworks if we don't have the appropriate space, things like that. Yeah.
I see thumbs up from Kathy.
Don't encourage any more donations.
Well, or I think it's what kind of, what are the donations that are going to make sense? And I mean, I know of individuals who have donated works and they haven't been fully accessioned, but they're not like, they're in this like limbo world between being part of a collection. And so we have to make sure we have the capacity to accept donations responsibly. And there might be some really meaningful ones, like, maybe it's not a matter of taking this out, but how to do this strategically or ways that are actually going to support the other mandates or the other works going on at the time.
I think you're right, just rewording that one, and it may not even need to reference to donate or loan to the appropriate institutions, but to refer somehow, however we word it, we refer back to those institutions and their mandates or something. I don't know.
One of the other things I found that rubbed me the wrong way a little bit about this one is the idea of the community's culture. I think partly it's the idea of culture being singular here, and also, you know, in terms of, you know, the notion of artifacts, then this also gets really complicated in terms of what is rightfully Sault Ste. Marie artifact versus an artifact of Batchewana or Garden River or the Métis Nation. So, and I know that we can't, like, well, I maybe we can, I don't know, but I doubt that we can find language that will be sufficiently clear in those determinations. But I think like just rewording it in such a way that not that it doesn't bring it up, but that it acknowledges our responsibility to other stakeholders within the same space. So anyway, that's my way of saying I don't have a concrete recommendation. And this might be something to mull over before our next meeting.
In other words, flag.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead, Kathy.
I'm just gonna say, let's work on the wording. Maybe it's just needs to remind people to encourage the preservation and interpretation, and something basic and not all of this other stuff. We'll work on it. Look at Andrew.
I think this one takes a bit of time to do because it's, I mean, the collections and museum policies are really changing a lot. Yeah.
I flagged it in yellow.
Excellent. Flag. So it is 5:03, which means it's about time for us to wrap for now, unless people want to stay for longer to pour over policy together. We'll wrap for today. Before we do, let me just pull up the agenda here.
As far as I got on my comments anyway.
More to come. So am I right in imagining that we'll start the next meeting from either from point 3.1.7 or from section 3.2 and continue on through the policy? Okay. Go ahead, Virginia.
Yeah, and I'll have a summary for 1.2 definitions included on the next agenda as well.
Amazing, thank you. So with that in mind, for our next objective, we need to set the date for our next meeting. Is there a date set already?
No, we can do a little bit of a poll since everybody's here to see what might work with holidays and vacation and everything.
My only request is sometime after the 7th of July.
I'm good, July.
The week following the 7th, I might have availability on the 12th, but the rest of the week I'm in solid meetings every day. So
The 12th works for me.
Me too.
And Kathy's nodding. Jane, are you free on the 12th? Oh, you're muted.
Saying the week of next week and the week after, it's a little tricky for me. I'm going in for surgery, so I don't know how my healing will be. Maybe if we can look at the third weekend after.
So the week of the 19th to the 23rd.
Yeah.
I think that's better because it'll give us some time to really think about those points too.
Also, if there are any other notes that Sean or anybody has, send those. We'll compile them and then add them in so that they're all integrated throughout the document. And then what I've done is any changes that we recommended today that everybody was good with are in green, and points that we need to take a further look at have been highlighted in yellow and flagged as such.
That's wonderful, Virginia. Thank you. So any of the evenings that week work for me. Are we also having a CVC meeting that week on the 21st?
Yes, yeah, we didn't have quorum at the last one, so the committee suggested we meet on the 21st.
Okay, so we're looking at the 19th or the 20th or the 22nd. Preferences? Can we try for the 19th? Okay. Okay, excellent. Andrea, is that okay for you?
Yep, it should be.
Okay, perfect. Well, thanks everyone. So in that case, it is time to adjourn. Do we need a motion?
Yes, please.
Okay. Moved by Kathy.
Good.
Seconded by Sean. All in favor, remain silent. Anyone opposed or abstaining, please indicate so in the chat or open your microphone. Okay, we're good to go. Resolved. We are adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Nice to see you
everybody.
all.
You guys.
Have a great day.